Let me ask you something. When you go to the grocery store, pay for your car insurance, fill up your gas tank, or check out on Amazon, do you ever wonder why everything just feels more expensive than it did a couple of years ago? You're not imagining it. You're not bad at math. And it's not just inflation. There is a specific, documented, calculable reason why your paycheck is stretching thinner than it used to. And most people have no idea it's even happening to them. It's called a tariff. And right now, Trump's tariffs are functioning like a hidden tax on every single American household. Whether you voted for him or not, whether you follow politics or not, whether you invest in the stock market or not, it doesn't matter. You are paying it. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how much you're paying, where it's hitting you hardest, what it's doing to the broader economy, and, most importantly, what you can actually do to protect your wallet. This is going to be one of those videos where you finish it and say, I wish I knew this earlier. So let's get into it. Before we get into the numbers, let's make sure we're all on the same page. A tariff is a tax that the US government charges on goods imported from other countries. When a company brings in electronics from China, cars from Japan, or steel from Canada, they have to pay a percentage of that product's value to the US government at the border. Now here's the critical thing, and this is where politicians love to fudge the truth. They say foreign countries are paying these tariffs. They say it's China paying the tax or Mexico paying the tax. But that's not what actually happens. A recent study by the Kiel Institute for the World Economy found that US importers and consumers bear 96% of the tariff burden. 96%. That means when a tariff goes up, the company importing the product pays it and then passes it right down to you at the register. Foreign governments don't write the check. American businesses do. And American consumers, that's you and me, absorb it through higher prices. This is not a political opinion. This is basic economics that both Republican and Democratic economists agree on. The tariff is ultimately a tax on American consumers. Full stop. Okay, here's where it gets real. The Nonpartisan Tax Foundation, and I want to emphasize nonpartisan here. They're not Democratic, they're not Republican, they just crunch numbers. Did a full analysis of what Trump's tariffs are actually costing American households. Their finding: in 2025, the average American household paid roughly $1,000 in tariff-related costs. That's already a big number, but it gets bigger. If current tariff policies stay in place, that figure is projected to climb to around $1,300 per household in 2026. Now the Yale Budget Lab, another nonpartisan research center, came in with their own estimate, and depending on how they measured it, they found average household costs from tariffs ranging from $570 on the low end to $1,700 if you account for income losses and price increases across the full economy. And it's not just economists and think tanks saying this. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger said in a formal Democratic response that American families have paid more than $1,700 each in tariff costs since Trump took office. Multiple fact-checkers reviewed that claim and rated it roughly accurate based on multiple independent analyses. So we're talking somewhere between $600 and $1,700 per year per household, depending on the methodology. Let's use the middle ground, about $1,000 to $1,300. That is real money. That is a car payment. That's a month of groceries. That's a significant chunk of somebody's emergency fund wiped out quietly, invisibly, one slightly more expensive item at a time. And here's the kicker. The Tax Foundation called this the largest U.S. tax increase as a percent of GDP since 1993. Not a small thing, not a rounding error. The biggest tax hike in over 30 years, and most Americans didn't even get a press conference about it. Let's get specific, because tariffs are expensive is abstract. Let me tell you exactly where in your life you're feeling this. Since December 2024, coffee prices have risen 33.6%. Ground beef is up 19.3%. Romaine lettuce is up 16.8%. Orange juice concentrate is up 12.4%. Potato chips are up 7.3%. These aren't coincidences. These are direct consequences of import tariffs on agricultural goods and the packaging materials and equipment used to produce them domestically. Every time you reach for your morning coffee or grill a burger, you're paying a little slice of tariff policy without knowing it. Computers, smartphones, TVs, washing machines, refrigerators, these all rely heavily on components made overseas, particularly in China and Southeast Asia. Tariffs on these components get baked into the retail price. If you bought a laptop this year or are thinking about upgrading your phone, you paid more than you would have 2 years ago, and tariffs are a significant part of why. This is a big one. Tariffs on steel and aluminum, which hit 25% and 50% respectively, directly raised the cost of building every car made in America. Add tariffs on auto parts imported from Canada, Mexico, and Japan, and you've got a recipe for higher sticker prices and higher monthly payments. GM reported that tariffs cost them $3.1 billion in 2025 alone. Those costs don't evaporate. They get spread across every car they sell. Analysts estimate tariffs could add anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 to the average new car price, depending on the model. This one catches people by surprise. Trump imposed 10% tariffs on lumber in 2025. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, cabinets, vanities, and upholstered furniture followed. The National Association of Home Builders warned that new home construction costs would rise. So if you've been wondering why contractors are quoting you more than you expected, or why the housing market still feels impossible, tariffs on building materials are part of that story. The administration has signaled potential tariffs on pharmaceuticals that could reach as high as 200% by mid to late 2026. That's not fully in effect yet, but the directional risk is real. Even before any pharma tariffs, tariffs on medical equipment and packaging materials have already contributed to rising healthcare costs. The Center for American Progress estimated that drug tariffs alone could add $90 per household annually. Here's the part of this story that gets buried in the policy debate, and I think it deserves more attention. Tariffs are what economists call regressive. That means they hit lower and middle-income households harder than wealthy households as a percentage of income. Think about it this way. A family making $50,000 a year, spending $1,000 extra because of tariffs, is losing 2% of their annual income. A household making $500,000 a year, spending $1,500 extra, is losing 0.3% of theirs. Same dollar amount, completely different impact on daily life. The Tax Foundation confirmed this directly. Their data showed that the average federal tax rate rises by 0.9 percentage points for households in the bottom income quintile, compared to a 0.7 percentage point increase for those at the top. Working class Americans are getting squeezed proportionally harder than wealthy Americans. And the products getting hit hardest? Groceries, basic electronics, budget cars, are exactly the products that lower and middle income families spend the most on relative to their income. Meanwhile, Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, signed in July 2025, provides some tax relief, and the administration argues that tax refunds could be $1,000 higher this year as a result. But the Tax Foundation's own analysis found that for lower income filers, the tariff costs actually wipe out the benefit of the tax cuts, and then some. So the people who most needed that tax break got it taken away by the tariff policy running in parallel. I'm not here to tell you what to think about the politics of that. I'm here to make sure you understand the economics, because understanding this is the first step to protecting yourself from it. Okay, so here's a plot twist in this story that I think most people have completely missed. Back in February 2026, the US Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that many of Trump's tariffs, specifically the ones imposed using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, were actually illegal. The court said IEEPA does not authorize tariffs. That ruling struck down a huge portion of the tariff regime. For a moment, people thought, wait, are we getting a refund? Are companies getting back the $180 billion in duties collected under IEEPA? And the answer is complicated. Even with the Supreme Court ruling, the tariff picture hasn't dramatically changed for consumers. Why? Because the Trump administration immediately pivoted to other legal authorities. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, Section 122, Section 301, to reimpose and maintain tariffs through different pathways. The effective tariff rate came down somewhat, but it didn't disappear. And new Section 232 tariffs, including potential 100% tariffs on pharmaceuticals, are being layered on top. So the bottom line is, the legal structure keeps shifting, but prices at the store aren't coming back down to 2022 levels anytime soon. That's because once companies raise prices in response to tariffs, they're slow to lower them, even if the tariff technically gets reduced. Your grocery bill has already adjusted upward. Getting it back down requires sustained competitive pressure, and that takes time. Beyond your grocery bill, let's zoom out and talk about what tariffs are doing to the overall economy, because this affects your investments and your job security too. The Tax Foundation estimates that current tariff policy will reduce US GDP by roughly 0.5% over the long term and reduce after-tax income for all income groups. JP Morgan Asset Management described the tariff regime as a permanent drag on economic growth. Their estimate is a 0.2% long-run reduction in GDP. That doesn't sound huge, but in a $28 trillion economy, it adds up to hundreds of billions of dollars of foregone growth. For the stock market, tariff uncertainty has been a major source of volatility throughout 2025 and into 2026. Remember last April's Liberation Day, when the S&P 500 fell nearly 20% in 7 weeks? That was almost entirely tariff-driven panic. The market recovered when the administration walked back some policies, but the uncertainty hasn't gone away. It's just become background noise. On the job side, tariffs are a two-edged sword. They do protect some domestic manufacturing jobs, that's the stated goal. But they also raise the input costs for every American manufacturer that relies on imported materials. Steel tariffs protect steel workers, but hurt automakers, appliance manufacturers, and construction companies that use steel. The net job impact, according to most independent analyses, is either roughly neutral or slightly negative when you account for the jobs lost in industries that use imported inputs. And then there's the retaliation factor. When the US imposes tariffs, trading partners respond in kind. European countries have targeted American agricultural exports, which hits American farmers. China reduced imports of US soybeans and LNG. This is a global game of economic chess, and American exporters are caught in the middle. Alright, enough context. Let's talk about what you can actually do, because understanding the problem is only useful if it leads to action. Go through your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements. Identify the categories where prices have risen the most: groceries, gas, subscriptions tied to physical goods, car-related expenses. Once you see where the tariff pain is concentrated in your life specifically, you can make targeted decisions. Knowledge is the first move. If you know pharma tariffs are coming and you take regular prescriptions, talk to your doctor about getting a 90-day supply instead of 30-day. If you're planning to buy a car, the window before potential further tariff increases may be narrowing. This isn't panic buying, it's just being ahead of the curve on timing. This sounds simple, but it's real. Buying products made primarily with US materials and labor insulates you from import tariff pass-throughs. That doesn't mean you need to become a buy American at all costs zealot. It just means being slightly more intentional about where major purchases come from. In your portfolio, consider the difference between companies that are tariff winners versus tariff losers. Domestic utilities, US-focused healthcare companies, and firms with strong pricing power and minimal import exposure tend to do better in high tariff environments. Export-heavy industrials and consumer goods companies that rely on global supply chains face the most headwinds. This doesn't mean you overhaul your whole portfolio, but if you're doing a regular rebalance, it's worth thinking about. The time to build your emergency fund is before you need it. If tariffs are quietly draining an extra $100 a month from your household, which for many families they are, that's $1,200 a year less available for savings and investing. Counteract that by finding 1 or 2 specific areas to cut spending and redirect that money into your savings rate. Even a small, consistent offset makes a meaningful difference over time. Let's bring this home. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. Trump's tariffs are not an abstract policy debate. They are a real, measurable cost being paid by real American households right now, somewhere between $600 and $1,300 per year, depending on your income and spending habits. They're hitting you in your grocery cart, at the car dealership, in your renovation budget, and soon, potentially in your pharmacy. They're regressive, meaning the people who can least afford it are getting hit proportionally harder. And they're not going away anytime soon, even after the Supreme Court ruling, because the administration has multiple legal pathways to maintain them. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to be angry about it, or agree with it, or oppose it politically. What it means is that you can plan around it. You can see the hidden tax for what it is, account for it in your budget, and make smarter moves because you understand what's actually happening to your money. That's what this channel is about. Cutting through the noise, looking at the real numbers, and giving you information that actually helps you make better financial decisions. If that's something you want more of, please hit subscribe. I'm putting out videos every single week on topics exactly like this one. Drop a comment below and let me know. Which of those spending categories has hit you hardest? I genuinely want to know, and I use your comments to shape what I cover next. Take care of your money. I'll see you in the next one.